The symposium today is not about a single person. However, it's hard to overestimate the impact that Jim Evans has had on this field. And I think all of us here kind of feel that way. There's a lot of names here today, a lot of big names in ag and food communications. And few of us would be here. In fact, the symposium probably wouldn't be happening without the sustained commitment and leadership of Dr. Jim Evans. And I want to personally thank him for that. And I got a little more emotional with that than I thought I was going to. So, we have a real great challenge in academia today because we are preparing often students for positions that don't exist at this moment in time. And that has really shifted how we approach education. In years past, when I went through as an undergraduate, when many of us did, we were really prepared with very strong technical skills. Technical skills are still important, but now we really have to look at adaptive abilities. And many of our challenges today are adaptive challenges. In 2009, there was a great article in the Harvard Business Review called Leadership in Permanent Crisis. And it was a precursor to the book that was on adaptive challenge that the authors presented as well. And they helped us understand the difference between a technical challenge and an adaptive challenge. A technical challenge is similar to, say, if you break your arm. You can go to the hospital, someone sets it in 4 to 6 weeks, your arm's functional again. An adaptive challenge is far more like high blood pressure. Suddenly we're going to have to do something very different to take care of that problem or even to move the needle. So as we look at adaptive challenges, for example, food distribution in this world is an adaptive challenge. We've got a lot of adaptive challenges ahead of us in food and agriculture. So I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the technical skills as well as some of the adaptive skills that we hope to build our students with, or I think where we're heading in the future. Some of the technical skills go back to those really basic things that we have always tried to build. Good visual, good speaking, good written skills. Of course, right? Written, right? We always want to say that. But also adeptness with media, across media. Now we are no longer in an area where anyone plays in one field. We're all moving across different fields. And knowing how to use that appropriately, knowing how to work with being skillful in each of those media areas, I think is very important, including mobile, print, web, social media, all of those kinds of things. Some background, of course, we still have an expectation of our students having some sort of technical abilities or experience in agriculture. Now, and I say agriculture in a very broadly defined way. So it may be somebody who has pulled a calf or two, but we're also talking about people who've worked in food plants and in packaging, those kinds of things. So, you know, having that kind of technical experience is very helpful and very grounding, I believe. Understanding and literacy of the world food economy, I think, is becoming absolutely critical. Trade, hunger, climate, all of these types of issues, I think, are important, and we're expecting our students to be more versed in those kinds of areas. Also, one of the final areas I'd say technical skills is critically important is scientific literacy. Oddly enough, even in higher ed, we sometimes have anti-intellectualism. And that comes across sometimes because science is sometimes very challenging to one's own, scientific facts are very challenging to one's own social, cultural, or political beliefs. And that can become quite an issue as we're working with our students. You know, there's a great quote by Michael Spector is you don't own the facts. You can own your beliefs, but you don't own the facts. And I think that's something that we need to help our students better understand. And in doing so, they also have to understand that scientific inquiry leads to a dynamic shift in knowledge. That is, that sometimes we understand that something that we thought we knew everything about, we learn later on has intended and unintended consequences. Having that element of scientific literacy, knowing that there is a dynamic shift in knowledge as we study things, leads to some of our adaptive skill sets that we hope to have our students gain while they're with us as well. Probably the most important adaptive skill, and it's one that I haven't even started teaching until the last probably 3 or 4 years, is listening. And I want to say that one more time. Listening It is so important that we teach our students how to listen. And I don't think we've really approached that in a strong way. And I put that blame on myself as much as anyone else because I've been an educator in higher ed for going on 17 years. So I think that's just absolutely elemental because we cannot understand another person's perspective until we actually hear them. Critical thinking in communications, critical thinking about agriculture, critical thinking about food systems, another incredibly important skill set. But also, we need to build our students' capacity for engagement and leadership, even with people with whom they disagree. I think that becomes very important, and to do so, we really need to have skill sets in civil discourse, in conflict resolution and conflict management, in how do you build partnerships and find common ground, and even strategic planning. All of those things will help us learn how to engage better with others. One of the things, hats off to our panel just before this, because it brought to mind another really important adaptive skill that we need to help our students gain, and that is creative entrepreneurship. I mean, not just in a business sense, but really being entrepreneurial, breaking down the boundaries. I read a great book in the airport called I Moved the Cheese on the way up here. Great book, really quick read. Really looking at that idea of entrepreneurship and how it can play out in our information marketplace. Adaptability to changing landscapes is critically important to our students, but they also need to understand oftentimes their own competing commitments. One of the reasons that I think we see so much defensiveness when we see people become critical of food production is because people internalize it as a personal sort of attack, and it's not a personal attack. But if we haven't identified our own competing commitment in that aspect, we will often never make progress on building those partnerships because we haven't uncovered that hidden commitment. So we've got to look at those hidden commitments that we all hold because we feel very protective of our own personal circumstance. And that individual commitment plays out and extends itself to the industrial commitment. And so I think those are some really important things that we start looking at because when we present romanticized images of agriculture to the public, that really is incongruent with some other images that they also see. And so that transparency in our production systems, in the totality of them, becomes very important as we start trying to build that common ground, as we try to start building transparency. People have every right to be concerned about their food production. And I hope my students understand that, you know, and they should be concerned about how it's produced, how it's packaged, how it's distributed. We should be using this interest of consumers right now to our advantage and be utilizing this moment of kind of your moment in the sun, your teachable moment, to go out there and get information out and use that moment. But it isn't just telling our story. And I know a lot of our groups right now, a lot of our advocacy groups are really pushing their constituents to do that, and there's nothing wrong with doing so. But we also have to, and we have to focus on it even first, is hearing those concerns and opening ourselves up for transparency. Thank you.